This is the TSG Multimedia Podcast for September of 2020. We're sponsored this month by Soundtraxx, Rails by the Bay 2021, and the TSG Train Crew on Patreon. Thank you very much. I'm your host, John Abaticola, and this month I have all the news and updates from August, as well as a great interview with my friend Mike Pannell from the High Plains Railroad Preservation Association. Try saying that 3 times fast. Hey, if you like the content on this channel, please hit the thumbs up button. Now, let's get to the most recent news from Soundtraxx. Okay, so as usual, I have George dialed up on our computer here. Hello, George. How you doing?
Hey, guys. Happy to be here. Good to see you again, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, so hey, what do you got for us this month?
Well, we actually got a pretty cool, exciting announcement to make. So if you're not subscribed to our newsletter, be sure you subscribe to our newsletter at soundtraxx.com and fill out the information so that way you can be notified. But what I actually have is a Current Keeper 2. Now this is another Current Keeper that has a different arrangement of the capacitors so that you can actually fit into different locations. Now we have our original Current Keeper, as you can see here, is a linear configuration of the capacitors. And what this does is this gives a kind of a 3x2 configuration. So if you don't have quite the length, but you may have some more width or height, you can actually fit the Current Keeper 2 into into some different fit applications that you may have.
Oh, cool, I see. So it's the same number of capacitors, but it just is a different size or a different shape. That's pretty clever.
Correct.
Yeah. Now, I have a dumb question. I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it just in case anybody out there doesn't know this. Maybe you could explain real quickly what this Current Keeper is and what it does.
Certainly. So what a Current Keeper is it is a bank of stay-alive capacitors, and the idea behind it is to help provide power to the decoder and the processor while your locomotive's running down the track. Now, to kind of simplify this a little bit, even in the case of a big bore where you have 30 wheels on each rail, the bulk of the electrical power on each side is being picked up by one wheel. Mm-hmm. And what that means is as that wheel's turning, that tangent point, the part that's actually touching the rail, lifts. And so power has to be broken and reestablished either through the same wheel or a different wheel. Now, if you have a high-powered processor on board or a current-hungry decoder, what can happen is during those millisecond losses of track power, the decoder may shut down. And this is really bad, especially when you get into a place where you have dead frogs and things like that. Now, in previous generation decoders, we've offered a stay-alive capacitor to come along with it. And as you can see here, this is a 220 microfarad capacitor, and this is rated for 25 volts. And this will keep the processor alive for about half a second, maybe a quarter of a second. So in some cases, like say, for example, if you have really dirty wheels, then it's going to become a lot more of a problem. Now, there's other options you can do. And that's where I've taken this one here. You can see I've actually got 2 capacitors soldered face-to-face to each other. And this will give a little bit more of a stay-alive capacitance. So about a half a second to maybe 3/4 of a second, depending on your model. Now, one thing I do want to point out really quickly, and we do have some videos on our YouTube channel that we've just posted about this, but notice the negative stripe on the capacitor, and that's really where you want to make sure that you wire your capacitors up properly. But as I mentioned, in some cases, these aren't going to be enough. And depending on the model, like, for example, this American 440, there's actually only 3 wheels on each rail picking up track power. You have 2 on the tender on the front truck on the left side, 2 on the right side of the rear truck on the tender, and then you have 1 wheel on each of the drive wheels on this locomotive. So power gets interrupted pretty frequently on this model. So inside here, I actually do have a Current Keeper. And so I'm just going to pick this thing up off the track, and this locomotive will actually make sound for about 30 to 40 seconds after a capacitor is fully charged.
Right.
And this is what's the Current Keeper. Now, when you're running, your motor's going to draw the bulk of that current, but when it's sitting still, you can see, I mean, this thing's still going. It's amazing how long this will run without being powered on the rails.
Yeah, especially when you're using LEDs, right?
Oh, absolutely. The LEDs just sip current. They don't take a whole lot of current at all. And so, the good news is now we've got another option for a current keeper. We do have a current keeper 2 now. Retail price is going to be $29.95, the same as the original current keeper. And these will be in stock on the shelf and in your store soon. And you can just now hear that the sound cut out on my model.
Wow. How long? That had to be almost a minute. Jeez.
I was going to say, I think I measured about 45 seconds or so at one point.
Yeah.
Now, inside this model is a TSU 1100. So it just barely sips current.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the point, though, is that you can run over dirty track if you have to. I mean, I know a lot of people on their layouts that they run on, they have certain switches or, turnouts that they go over where they're problematic. And this will solve that problem. It'll just allow enough power to continue going to the motor and lights and everything to keep it going until it grabs the next piece of live track. So that's really great.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And yard ladders are really problematic, especially when you use a whole bunch of dead frogs. Because depending on the length of your turnout, a short locomotive wheelbase may be on the points and the frog at the same time,
right? Therefore,
rendering one side of the locomotive completely dead. And so this gives you power to get through that. So It's been a really great addition to our product line, and so it's been doing really well. And we've had a lot of requests for these. So current keeper 2, new announcement. So we're pretty excited about that.
Yeah, sounds awesome. Super top secret announcement right here. Love it.
So instead of just being an infomercial, I wanted to give you a little bit of a modeling tip this week.
Oh, cool.
And it kind of involves this locomotive here behind me. Because this old American 440, this locomotive ran long before electric lights were as common as they are today. And so in these old locomotives, they actually had oil lights. Now, when I was installing this decoder, first of all, I have an affinity for the really, really old locomotives. And so when these new Bachmann 440s were announced with the motor actually in the locomotive, I was so excited and I couldn't wait, and I went out and got 2 of them.
Oh, cool.
So when I was doing this, I remembered that there's an oil light. And so I was trying to think of a great way to mimic that flickering of the oil light. Well, in our Tsunami and Tsunami 2, we have a firebox flicker. And that's a really flickering, randomly flickering light that kind of goes really bright and really dim at a fairly fast rate. And I thought, well, maybe if I do that with a very, very slow flash rate, so that way you can, it wouldn't be quite as flickering as a fire. And I didn't really like the way the effect looked. So one of the co-workers at Soundtraxx actually came to me and reminded me that we had the new addition of the ashpan light in the Tsunami 2. Now, the ashpan light simulates the light that you would see along the ashpan, which isn't a flicker, but it's more of a gentle, gradual pulsing, so to speak. And so that was a really cool decision, and we put that as our headlight effect. So as you can see here in the short video clip, the ashpan light doesn't stay solid like a electric light bulb, but it also doesn't flicker quite the same like a traditional firebox flicker. And so this is one of the really cool ways that Soundtraxx has given you to be able to model your locomotives more closely. And that's in addition to the ability to do a wood-burning locomotive sounds like I have on this locomotive as well, so that way you can really model the locomotive itself without having to take sacrifices to say, well, I know it's not a coal burner, but that's the sound that's already in the decoder. Right. You can make those changes. And so the Tsunami 2, that's one of many reasons why people are switching to Tsunami 2.
Sure. And the other cool thing about that is the fact that you can assign that effect to any one of your outputs. So that helped too.
Exactly. So if you have one of our decoders that has 8 lighting functions or 4 lighting functions, all of those effects can be applied to any of those lighting outputs. So it's actually been really cool effect.
Yeah, I like how you did that.
So that's everything that I have for you this month. And John, I know what you're thinking. And so before you ask, I'm going to tell you that, yes, we are happy to extend the TSG 15 another month through the month of September. So you'll get 15% at checkout at soundtraxx.com on your purchases. So make sure to use the code TSG15 at checkout, and you'll get 15% off. And these current Keeper 2s will be listed on there. If they're not already listed, they'll be listed shortly.
George, you really headed me off at the pass. I wasn't even there yet. I was waiting for you to finish talking.
Well, I decided that I know how we go towards the end of these conversations, so I figured we'd have a little fun with you.
You know, I'm always going to go to bat for the best viewers on YouTube, so...
There you go.
Yeah, so that's...
Well, we want to make sure to keep those guys happy.
Yeah, and that's cool, you know. So I guess then when you go to Soundtraxx.com and order your current keeper too, you can get the 15% off from that. All right, George.
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. And I guess we'll see you
no
next...
problem.
Yeah, we'll see you next month, eh?
Yep, sounds good. I'll be here, same place, same time, but a month later.
All right, I'll talk to you then.
I think that's right.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Take care.
Thanks, George. So, like we talked about in the video, these current keepers can help improve the running qualities of a model quite a bit, especially over dirty track. Having a different version of it in a different shape is a great way to expand the versatility of the current keeper product line. So, if you have a model that you've wanted to use a current keeper in, but you just couldn't fit the original because it was too long, go over to Soundtraxx.com and get a current keeper too. It sounds to me like it's a bit thicker and just not as long. And also, don't forget to use the discount code TSG15 for 15% off your order. I want to thank Soundtraxx for taking care of the best viewers on YouTube. I know I'm not the only one who appreciates that. Now let's get a quick update about Rails by the Bay 2021. That's the upcoming NMRA National Convention for 2021. It's being held right here in the Bay Area. For that, we go to Chris Palermo.
Oh, hi, John. Thanks for the invitation. I was just weathering one of my Southern Pacific steel cabooses of the type that used to run right here in the Bay Area, the site of NMRA 2021, Rails by the Bay, our next national convention in Santa Clara, California, July 4 to 11, 2021. But let me take a moment to tell you about two great layouts that we've just added to our layout tour program. Guy Cantwell's Willoughby Line is a double-deck HO scale model railroad depicting a California theme. It's proto-freelanced with an operations-based track plan. It features a double helix, a staging level below the two operating levels, and many scratch-built and kit-bashed structures. Next, Howard Lloyd's Claremont Docks Railroad is a 12-foot by 18-foot switching layout inspired by the Lehigh Valley's small Black Tom Terminal, which jutted into New York Harbor. The year is 1944, and the terminal is busy with war material bound for the European theater. The track plan appeared in the February 2007 Model Railroader magazine, and the layout was last open on tour to members in 2015. Howard focuses on modeling signature scenes of the area. Most structures are scratch-built and include a large brick warehouse, a very long corrugated freight shed, and a terminal grain elevator. There are also 5 scratch-built boats on the layout. While this layout does operate, the real focus is a realistic rail marine diorama. So 2 additional layouts to offer you with completely different personalities. To visit these and other outstanding layouts in the Bay Area, join us in July 2021 for Rails by the Bay. Online registration will be opening within days, and hotel registration opens in January 2021. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Chris. I've actually done a layout tour of Guy Cantwell's Willoughby Line here on the channel. You can see it at the link that just appeared on the top right corner of your screen if you're watching on a computer. If you're on a television or some other device that doesn't show the on-screen links, just search the channel for Guy Cantwell and you'll find it. So anyway, last month I was interviewed 3 different times. If I sound a little surprised about this, it's because I am. I'm used to being the one asking the questions during interviews, and to be honest, it was pretty cool to be on the other side of that equation for a change. One of those interviews even included our top secret producer here, which is really even more unusual. The first interview was for Caboose Hobby's OS Check-In series. That was on August 12th. Sydney and I talked with Kevin Rubel for a little over an hour about our interest in trains and also how TSG Multimedia was started. It was pretty fun, and it made me think about stuff that I usually don't have time to think about. So thanks, Kevin, for having us. It was a great time. On August 15th, I hosted the TSG train crew for a private virtual hangout. In this meeting, we shared stories about our experiences with trains, model trains, and rail fanning. This is always a big highlight of the month for me because just as everyone who watches this channel on YouTube is one of the best viewers on YouTube, I think of the TSG train crew as the best of the best viewers on YouTube, if that makes any sense. We always have a great time enjoying each other's company, and I'm actually planning to have TSG train crew member Michelle Kempema as the special guest on this month's TSG train crew hangout. All train crew members are invited, and in case you're new to the channel, I refer to my Patreon supporters as the TSG train crew. Patreon's a website that lets people support their favorite artists by pledging a monthly amount. So speaking of Patreon, the Patreon page is 2 years old this month. Well, actually it was 2 years old on August 28th, so a few days ago, but when I went public with the announcement that I opened the page, it was September of 2018. Recently, Patreon created a new option that lets patrons sign up on an annual basis, and if you do that, you get a discount. If you've thought about signing up, this is a great way to do it because it's 10% less than the monthly amount, and you still get access to all the same great exclusive stuff. So check it out if you have time. So anyway, also on August 15th, I was interviewed by one of our newest train crew members, Drew Warrington. Drew has a YouTube channel called Nordell Model Railroad Club, and he makes pretty good videos too. I subscribed to the channel when he contacted me to ask about doing the interview because I liked what I saw on there. Then this past week, he published a 40-minute video that's an interview with Michelle Kempema. I'm mentioning this because Drew's a pretty young guy with what looks like a brand new channel. To give you an idea, when I last checked, he had 18 subscribers. Yet, he had the courage to ask someone like Michelle, who's very well known, to do a 40-minute interview. I think that shows how serious he is about making good content for his channel. So right now, the channel doesn't have a ton of videos on it, but I'd encourage you to go and look at what he's doing. And if you like it, subscribe. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being the first YouTuber to interview Rod Stewart. While I'm on the subject of YouTube channels, these are some of the other TSG train crew members' YouTube channels. Humanity Junction, The Sea is Silent. This is run by a guy named Heath, and he makes good-looking videos that are also good in terms of sound quality. I subscribed to his channel after I met him on Sparky's live streams. Sparky 107. He's our friend from Canada. He's one of the longest standing train crew members, and he does a weekly live stream every Wednesday that's focused on YouTube and model railroading as a community. And if you think about it, it really is. I think Sparky does a really great job. Also, Joey Butzik, he does woodworking videos as well as model railroading and diorama building. Also a very good looking and good sounding channel. And then David Meese has a channel called Yosemite Valley Garden Railroad. I bet we can all guess what that's about. He said he's going to post a bunch of videos to it this month, and culminating with a video about the SP4449 that he was lucky enough to get to record. So check those out when you have a chance. We went up to see Murph in Boulder Creek on Sunday the 16th. I had something to give him, and it's always good to visit anyway. He had to evacuate either that same night or the next day due to the big fire that's been raging in the Santa Cruz Mountains since the 17th. Then on the 19th, we went up to Niles Canyon to make a donation of DVDs to help the Niles Canyon Railway through their COVID shutdown. I also had a chance to talk to Henry Baum. He's the current president of the Pacific Locomotive Association. That's the organization that operates the Niles Canyon Railway. So let's go to a quick clip with Henry right now. Okay, so I'm here with Henry Baum, the president of the Pacific Locomotive Association, and we're talking about doing a video probably for the podcast. Haven't decided for sure yet, but it'll probably be for the podcast. And what do you think, Henry? What do you think you'll want to share on that video?
But I think I could see the opportunity for multiple videos, for multiple podcasts. And I see a lot of opportunities here to showcase some of the equipment that we have here in the yard, to talk about our plans. We're going to start having very small public runs beginning in September, and we want to grow those as the COVID-19 restrictions lessen. We'll be able to do more and more, and just really let people see what it's like in the yard. I think it's so interesting. It's so different from when they ride the train.
Yeah.
So
one of the reasons that I'm thinking it would be a nice idea to do this is because during a time like this, when the trains can't run, an organization like this also loses a huge opportunity to raise funds. So I think by showing people what's here and getting more interest in it, more people will want to come out when the trains are running to see them in action. So it should be good.
And maybe they'll just want to send a check anyway.
And that's
we're always good with that,
right? That's always good too. You can volunteer by working, or you can volunteer with money. All right, thanks, Henry.
All right, thank you, John.
So Henry alluded to the fact that they're running steam trains on 2 weekends this month, next weekend, and then the following weekend as well. 2 of the excursions are at twilight. They're actually twilight rides. They don't usually do night running in the canyon, so that alone makes it worth checking out. You can find out more by going to ncry.org. You have to go to the website to buy your tickets anyway, so just head over there when you have a chance and get all the details on the rides. You'll be glad you did, and they could use your help. So on that same day, August 19th, I participated in a live streaming interview for Sparky 107 on his weekly Wednesday live stream that I just mentioned a minute ago. That was a lot of fun. Dave's a really easy to talk to guy, and he asked some really good questions too. On the 20th, I met with Jack Burgess to record for an upcoming program that he put together all about logging inclines. And Jack explains what they are, how they work, and such. That video will be out on this channel in October, but the TSG train crew already got to see it ad-free and in 4K ultra-high definition quality. On August 23rd, we went live from the studio right here with our 6th episode of TSG Live Shelter in Place. This was a first. I hosted a live call-in talk show format for a couple of hours. It was a really great experience overall. I even got my first ever crank call during that show. Even though it wasn't planned, it wasn't completely unexpected either, and I explained why on the show. Anyway, we went back to Niles Canyon on the 26th to record the first of the videos Henry Baum and I talked about in the clip I played for you just a minute ago. And that video comes out a week from today. I think it's a good one, so don't miss it when it comes out. On the 27th, I talked with my friend Mike Pannell. Mike first appeared here on the channel earlier this year. He's the guy who talked about the big boy, the 4004 that's on static display in Holiday Park in Cheyenne, Wyoming. We also did a show from his missile silo where he works on a whole lot of other restoration projects. Well, we had intended to make another trip out to that part of the country last April, but that plan was sidelined, like so many things this year, by COVID. I've been in contact with Mike on a fairly regular basis, though, and when he had an internet connection installed at his silo recently, we thought it was a good idea to do an update interview together, virtually. He's made some pretty cool discoveries on one particular project, so let's go to that video now. Okay, so I have Mike dialed up on the computer here, and you might remember Mike. We talked to him last year. I met him in October last year when I was on a trip to Colorado, and Michelle Kempema took us to Wyoming to meet Mike, and we did a couple of videos, one about the Big Boy 4004 in Holiday Park, and one about the projects that Mike works on out at the silo that he has out there in Wyoming, east of Cheyenne. So, Mike, welcome back. It's great to see you again. What do you have for us today?
Hello, how are you? It's good to see you.
Yeah, doing great.
So, today I wanted to just illustrate some of the interesting things we found on this caboose that's behind me. You may remember from the last video you did that we said that it was an 1880 Union Pacific caboose.
Right, that was the oldest Union Pacific caboose known to exist at the time, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah, that's correct. So since then, a few things have happened that have meant that it's gone back even further than we imagined. And in fact, it may well be the oldest piece of Union Pacific equipment anywhere in the USA.
Oh, wow.
So it makes it quite, it was special already, but it makes it more special even than it was before from our point of view. So I'd just like to take you through some of the reasons why we think that's the case, and what we base our assumptions on our evidence on.
Okay.
To prove that we think it's now 1870.
Oh, wow. So, that's even 10 years older.
Yes, yeah, we believe so. So in the records, there's a very good Union Pacific book on cabooses written by Jim Ehrenberger, and it's incredibly detailed as far as reports and histories of cabooses is concerned. But there are some gaps, and the gaps obviously really are with the very earliest cabooses, because there is nothing very much known about them. There's no plans, there's no drawings, no specifications, nothing really is known about how they came about and who built them and how long they lasted for. So that makes this caboose really interesting, because we know that the earliest UP cabooses had octagonal 8-sided cupolas, right, like a lighthouse in the middle of the roof. And we also know that they had arched side windows, at least 6 of them. Some of them had 8 windows per side. And that they also had horizontal siding instead of vertical siding. So they looked a lot different. So what happened was, once we got this caboose, which we found in Boulder, Colorado, on a ranch, we knew the number on the caboose was 2095 because it had that clearly displayed still above the doors. And 2095, according to the records, was built in 1880, but it also had a conversion date of 1885, which was curious, because there's no reason for a caboose to be converted after 5 years. That seemed somewhat strange. So I'll just give you an illustration of what we found on the caboose. So as we started pulling the siding off on this one, you can see this condition it's in is pretty awful. There's very little side support left, and the top sills are gone. The roof is bowed in due to snow load down in Colorado that's broken some of the roof bows. We've replaced some of the frame already, that was rotted out completely as well. So I'll just illustrate with this amazing pointy stick. So we had windows here in this spot. The light doesn't help, I'm afraid, but we had windows here. We had a window right here as well. And then down the other end, there was a single window, which I'll illustrate, which is still there, obviously, where the bathroom is, and the wash basin.
That's how you found it, right?
So that's how we found it. Basically, a 3-window or 4-window CA or non-common standard caboose, they called them, because they were the batch built before the CA came on the scene, if you like. So they were a non-common standard caboose. They had a narrow cupola on top with a walkway around the outside of it, which again was, made them look different. And that was before the kind of wide vision CA caboose cupola came in. So we knew we had a very old caboose. We knew it was 1880. But as we started pulling the siding off, it became apparent that this is also a window space. And the reason we say that is if you can see up here, there's some screws in a piece of wood.
Uh-huh.
And there as well. And that is a window brace to stop the window falling out when you lift a window up.
Okay, that makes sense, yeah.
And then down at the bottom right here, you can see it. Can you see the slot in the wood?
Yes, sir. That is definitely a slot.
Yes, exactly. That's a slot for a windowsill. So that made us begin to realize that we had a caboose with potentially 6 windows. So one here, another one right here, another one here, which I put a temporary arch window in just for fun. So that got us realizing that we were working on a caboose that was way older than 1880. The other thing we found out from the records was that its previous number before 2095 was 1150. And the 1100 series cabooses were octagonal cupola cabooses. So the actual build date of 1880, we believe, is a rebuild date when it received the new cupola and a new interior, new siding, and just completely new interior and exterior arrangements.
So they were probably modernizing it at the time, huh?
Yeah, and I think the reason is probably because with all those windows in the sides and the little tiny cupola in the middle, there's only room for one seat in that cupola. You'd have had to walk round the outside of all the cupboards and the lockers because there would have been no room for cupboards on the outside of the caboose, on the outside of the interior, if you see what I mean.
Right.
So they modernized them, and they were probably also, with all those windows in, they were very, very fragile as well. And because cabooses generally got a beating, they obviously wanted to beef them up and make them more practical. So a lot of the bracing you see, like these, were added later as well. We don't believe that this cross brace was actually even in here when it was built. So there's a lot of inconsistencies in the construction of it. So here's a photo of 1112, and this is exactly what this caboose would have looked like as built. So you can see the horizontal siding just about, and you can see the octagonal cupola and the arched windows.
Yeah, I can see that. I like how they have Waycar painted on the outside, just in case you can't tell.
Yeah, that's right. Just in case you didn't know that the bright yellow car at the end was something different. Yeah, and of course at that time they were bright yellow. UP went to red cabooses in about 1902, so they went from yellow to red and then back to yellow on these things, which is also interesting. And it was a slightly different yellow to the current UP yellow. It was a much more golden yellow, and we believe it had dark red window trim, and the trucks were a dark red as well. So quite a few differences. So that's what we base our beliefs on, that we now actually have an 1870 caboose, which is truly incredible and something that no one's ever seen before.
Yes, and unexpected.
That's right, really unexpected, and we're really happy that we chose the caboose we did from the ranch when it was offered to us, because we have something really special. So that's the story of the caboose. It's going to be a long-term restoration, but at the same time, it's an incredibly important restoration. It's going to have things like trucks specially built, because even wooden trucks from that era just don't exist.
Right.
They're a much shorter wheelbase and a different truck altogether. So it's a long-term thing, but it's an incredibly special thing. And I like to think perhaps that at some time maybe this caboose could go to the Golden Spike and be behind one of those locomotives there.
Oh, that could be really cool.
Incredibly close to the age of the Golden Spike, isn't it? So
yeah, what I find really remarkable about this particular piece of equipment is not only is it the oldest one in existence, but it's also a one of a kind, because I don't think I've heard of any cabooses even in existence that are that old. So it's very, 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 very early. Yeah. So it's unlikely you'll find anything. And obviously being in Colorado and this Wyoming area, it helps preserve things like this where nowhere else would. Yeah, it's much drier there, isn't it?
Yeah. So we're really excited about it. It's much more archaeology than it is restoration, because of the fact there really are no drawings. There's no internal arrangements for these. So as we pull stuff out from the inside, we're trying to look at floor patterns and shadows on the floor to see if it gives us any kind of clue as to how the arrangements were inside.
Right, that makes sense.
Yeah, so it's an exciting one, and I'm looking forward to jumping back on it whenever I get the time to do so.
Yeah, that's really great. So, also, when we were at the silo last time, you showed us a great streetcar, like a trolley or something. You've been working on that too, right?
That's right. Yeah, we've been working on Denver 0.04, which is a 1908 Woba trolley car, and it's actually the last Denver trolley car to operate in Denver in 1950.
Very good.
So it's coming on well. It's been a year now that we've been working on it. We've run into many, many issues that we didn't expect to find, which is just par for the course when you're dealing with wooden and steel rolling stock. You just expect the worst, and then anything else is good, So,
well, one of the things I know from talking to really a number of people who do or have done restoration is the more stuff you take apart, the more stuff you find wrong with it too. So it turns into a much bigger project than you ever dreamed it could be. And it sounds like that's right. Sounds like that's what's going on with this one too.
Yeah, it is. And fortunately, we're working with the city of Arvada. It's a project that they're funding, partially funding, along with their historic preservation grants as well. And it's been really nice because they're really, really good to work with. And they've been supportive of everything we've told them and asked them and everything else. So they're well aware of what we're up against. But they're absolutely committed to seeing this trolley finished and on display, and it's even going to have its own building in the park down in Denver. So
that's awesome.
It means a lot to them. It's going to be a really, really nice display piece when it's finished. So at the moment, we're putting sheet metal back on. We tried to, as with all historic projects, we tried to reuse absolutely everything that can possibly be reused. So you can see on the front of the trolley that there's a panel there with the number on it, the original number. We uncovered those under the paint, and we've managed to save 6 of the 8 panels with the original numbers on. So although they'll require work, it's really important to me that things like that get saved, because it is the whole identity of the trolley right there.
Right. That's what preservation or historic restoration is about, is saving as much of the original as possible,
exactly,
right?
Yeah. And Arvada are of the opinion that this trolley should look like it did when it finished service in 1950. So they're not looking for, mirror finishes on the sheet metal. They're looking for the dings and the dents and the weather-worn appearance that it had when it finished in 1950. And that's what we've been trying to achieve as well. So probably 85% of the sheet metal is original and going to be reused. And then I would say maybe 70%, 75% of the wood inside is going to be completely original too, and just refurbished and repaired. So we're pleased with it. It's coming on really well. We've had some issues with the wood on the roof. I'll show you some of those things. You can see we've got windows going in now, which is nice to see.
Yeah.
And there's another number as well.
0.04. I don't remember if we talked about that, but is there a story behind that? Sounds like there should be a story behind that. Like, why isn't it just 4 or 04? Why is it?
I believe it was to denote the fact that these were actually interurbans. So that all their other trolleys were numbered in sort of a 300 series and, just 3 numbers. So I think these were done to denote the fact they were interurbans, because this ran from Arvada to Golden out in the country. So I believe that was the case. I may be wrong. Its original number was number 11, and then it had a second number, I believe, before it was refurbished and became 04. So the interior is going back in. There's some of the paneling, that's original paneling, that's been restored.
Oh, that's beautiful.
You can see.
Yeah.
Which is going back, and then the roof is gradually going back on. All the roofing material has had to be replaced, and most of the bows have had to be cut and reprofiled because of snow load. It was used as a cabin up in the mountains for years, and the roof got crushed by snow, so we've had to reprofile a lot of those as well. So lots of new flooring gone in. We've saved as much of the original as we can. The floor is fir and maple, which is interesting. And then the rear end of the trolley, which you can see up there, has been entirely rebuilt because there was really very little left of it. So it's coming along pretty well. I'll show you one interesting piece we found underneath another piece of wood. Is the only reference to its original number that we found on the entire trolley.
Oh, look at this.
So that is the absolutely original 1908 number, which we found underneath another piece of wood. So that's going to be saved and then be framed and go on a display panel inside the trolley so that people can see it.
Yeah, that's a lucky find, huh?
It is a very lucky find. We've not found anything else at all. So there's going to be some electrical put into it so that when it's in the park, it will actually be able to be lit up at night inside so that you can see how the lighting was arranged, and it'll just bring some light to the interior. I'll show you around this side. See, there's another number.
Yeah.
At the moment, it still has the caboose trucks that it came in on, which you can see just about there.
Oh, yes.
They're CB&Q caboose trucks, wooden ones, but we are hoping that eventually we will build correct trucks for it, and it will go back on correct streetcar trucks, which will make it look better, obviously, for the purists, and make it sit better as well.
Yeah, this is really cool. You know, it's funny. I think about, model railroading has a lot of facets to it. You have woodworking and design and electronics and all these things that makes model railroading really great for kids. What you do there, I mean, you have to be a woodworker, you have to be a welder, you have to be an electrician, I mean, a painter. It's remarkable how many different things you need to be able to do, because when these things were built, they were presumably built in a factory by a number of different people who specialized in each thing that they did.
Exactly, yeah.
Right? You're one guy or a small team of people having to do basically the same things that they did when they built them, and I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, we have to. There's certain things with the electrical, we have to call in an electrician because it has to be to code. But everything else, we have to do in-house ourselves. So you have to be a bit. You have to have some knowledge of a bit of everything, really, to be able to do it. This one, we've had to add a lot of structural steel to the underneath because it's had several serious accidents in its life. So on one side of the body, the frame was pushed in by 2 inches where it had been hit by something. And then at the front of the trolley, it has a new section of frame in there where it had been hit by a vehicle in Denver, we understand. So, and both ends of the trolley were drooping just because of the way it's built, really.
Yeah.
And the age of it. So we've had to add some structural steel in there to try to help it to stay as straight as it possibly can. This one was unusual in that it was sold off as a cabin, but it kept its truss rods underneath. And obviously I'll show you those. Obviously that helped it to stay straighter than it would normally have done. So this is the center doorway, and you can think you can see the truss rod right here.
Yeah, there it is.
Running through. So this one actually maintained them. Normally when they sold these off as cabins, they got rid of the truss rods because they were in the way of loading them onto trucks and stuff like that.
Right.
So this one has that advantage to it. But so that's the update on the trolley, really. It's going to have replica equipment inside. We've managed to find a guy down in Colorado that has 33 original Denver trolley car seats. So we're buying those because when the trolley arrived here, it only had 11 seats in it. So it's going to go back with a completely full complement of original seats, which is really important, and that's going to look really good. So
that'll give people a much better idea of how it looked when it was in service, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. And it saves a lot of money too, because finding the material to make rattan seats is really, really difficult. And they'd have to come from overseas. So that's good. So that's the update on the trolley, really.
Excellent.
As far as it is at this point.
You know, I had plans to come back. I know you know this, but I'm going to tell the viewers. We had plans to come back out. I think it was in April this year.
That's right.
We would have done this in person, but, you know, COVID and, you know, we had a wrench thrown into our plans, unfortunately. So I'm really glad that you were able to get internet out there and able to do this, because these are projects that I was really fascinated by when you showed us the first time we came out there. Is there anything else in the works that you can hint at? That, I mean, I know usually people are pretty secretive about some stuff, but do you have anything that maybe we can tease people with, that maybe we'll do another update?
We have, there's a couple of things we have coming in, both of which we didn't really anticipate. We have a boxcar from 1887, which we found about 50 miles north of here. And it was purely a fluke phone call from a lady who had the boxcar to the UP Historical Society and then to me. We went to identify the boxcar, and it turned out that, unbelievably, it's actually an 1887 Colorado and Southern boxcar, but originally built by Pullman in their factory along with car 57, which is there behind me.
Right.
And it was actually built at the same year in the same factory for the same order for the Denver, Texas and Fort Worth Railroad. So that boxcar actually operated in the same trains as this Pullman car.
Wow, that's cool. What are the chances,
that's really,
you know?
highly, highly unusual.
Yeah, I think about that. Like, what are the chances of that? Like 1 in a million, probably, you know?
And both of them being found in Wyoming.
Yeah.
So we're going to get that boxcar, because from my point of view, that history is just incredible. So we have that one coming in probably next month, and that'll just be stored here until we can get round to it. And then we also have on Facebook Marketplace, somebody advertised half of a passenger car for sale. And when I mean half, I mean it was sawn in half. But it was a wooden passenger car, and I went up to look at it. That was up in Orange Junction, so we thought it was probably likely to be CB&Q or CNW, Chicago Northwestern. So we went to look at that, and it turned out that it's half of an 1882 Chicago Northwestern passenger car built by Ohio Falls Car Company back in Indiana.
Okay.
So we talked about it, and it wasn't something that, you know, I was really wanting to spend money on picking up. But the owner then said he would deliver it for free.
Oh, nice.
So we have that coming in too, and it still has its original mahogany and maple interior, although it's been painted. And we believe it's only the second example of an Ohio Falls passenger car in existence. So we kind of get that one by default, but it's nice to have because it's so rare. So
yeah, it's half the car it used to be.
That's right. That's right. It is. So it's going to be a great example of somebody else's work.
Yeah.
You know, some other builder's quality and works.
Sure.
It'll arrive here eventually.
Now, I remember that one because I saw photos of that on Facebook, and we should mention that because you have a Facebook page for your own business of restoration, and you also have GoFundMe set up for a lot of these things. I think we should make sure that people know, if they're interested, how they can help you with the work, because this is important work.
The boxcar has a GoFundMe set up for it, and the passenger car as well. So all of these things take time and money. We have to, even if we've been given them for free, you know, the famous free word comes up, and it's like, yes, that's wonderful, it's free, but how do we physically load it, get it here, offload it, you know, and everything else? Cranes aren't free, and transportation isn't free. So we're always looking for help with that. We're just lucky that sometimes people offer us stuff for free and deliver it too, which is very nice. But then there's still the cost of restoration and everything else. So there's always a need for funds, whether it be, some people send $10, which is wonderful. We really appreciate it. And some send $500, which is nice too. So whatever people can afford in these difficult times is really, really appreciated and goes directly to the project that they want it to go to. So
what's the easiest way for people to find that? Would it be to find you on Facebook or?
Facebook is really the easiest, yeah, to be honest.
Okay.
And our most updates are on there, and we're on there under High Plains Railroad Preservation.
High Plains Railroad Preservation.
Yeah, and then each car has its own page as well. So there's a page for Car 57 and a page for the Caboose. There's a page for the Trolley, just to keep things in separate categories, really.
Excellent. Well, hey, I want to thank you. This has been really cool. I really wish we could have got out there in person, but like I said, things happen. And
that's right. Yeah.
Hopefully,
exactly.
Once this virus thing subsides and we are able to travel safely again, we'll get out and do a better in-person visit and hopefully see some more of this stuff, maybe even see some of it close to completion.
Yeah, that's right. Let's hope so.
Cool.
I really hope to get something completed. The trolley is going to be stored here for a while, I think, so that will be stored here complete. And then I can get on with other things in the meantime. So yeah, please do that. And we welcome visitors as well. Anybody who's in the area, if they can contact us via Facebook, we always like to show people around and show people what we're doing.
Excellent. Hey, thanks for taking the time, Mike. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And hopefully
thanks a lot. We'll talk to you soon.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. See you. Bye.
Bye. I want to tell you, as I watched the video while I was editing it, I couldn't help but wish I had been able to get out there to do a pro video in person. But I got to tell you, I'm really pleased with the fact that we can do something at all from such a remote location. He's east of Cheyenne, something like 20 miles, really in the middle of nowhere. So the fact that he even has internet out there is pretty remarkable. So thanks again for taking the time to share your projects with us here, Mike. And I'm really looking forward to the next time. So anyway, last Saturday, the 29th, we went to Silicon Valley Lines to document a remote operating session. I talked about this on the live stream from last month. They've built several camera cars that stream live video to a local computer, which in turn streams to another platform that off-site members can use to control the trains on the layout from wherever they are, miles and miles away. They also have a remote dispatching system set up so that someone can also dispatch from another location. So we're going to put together a video that explains how they're doing all this wizardry so that people anywhere really can do the same until it's safe to gather in person for operating sessions again. If you have a minute and you're being responsible by wearing a cloth face mask when you go out and about, you might want to look at the Teespring store. I designed a few face masks that I thought were pretty cool. These are also high quality too. I've ordered some for myself so that we could go chase trains and go do other stuff that I've mentioned on here in the recap of last month to do that stuff safely and legally. Masks are actually required where I live if you go out anywhere where people are. So anyway, it's time now for our catches of the month. Our first catch comes from TSG train crew member Miguel Chavez. It's a famous steam engine you might have heard of called the 4014. This was a shot in Banning, California from last October. TSG train crew member Drew Warrington shares this shot from Strasburg, Pennsylvania. This shot comes from Chris in New Mexico through our mutual friend Al Hovey. On August 3rd, he caught BNSF number 7352 in DP mode with 3 former Amtrak cars headed to Southern California. That's something you don't see every day. TSG train crew member Mike Walker set this cool shot of a westbound stack train coming into Mosier, Oregon. He took this shot on a rail fanning trip in 2017. These shots come from TSG train crew member Joey Carroll. The first one is the Mission Bay Local at sunset in San Jose. This is the INPOA in Fremont. INPOA stands for Intermodal North Platte to Oakland. This is a shot from 2019 Joey took of the southbound Coast Starlight that was detoured over Tehachapi. And finally, here's a BNSF train on the rail bridge that goes under the highway bridge in Oroville, California. Thanks for your catches of the month, guys. If you have something you'd like to share, you're welcome to send it to me at podcast@tsgmultimedia.com. All I ask is that you only send your own photos, and tell me what it is, when, and where. I might not be able to share all the photos I get, but I'd love to share your best catches if you're willing to share. I got an email from my friend Nick, who shared one of his N-Scale projects with us in July. This is another N-Scale project that he's been working on. I think you can tell from this photo that Nick did a lot of detailing work on this model, and then he weathered it too. So he did a bunch of custom painting, used powders, replaced the AC units. There's just all kinds of stuff going on here. I'm hoping someday that we can get Nick on the channel here to show us one of these projects in person so that he can point out all the stuff, or maybe even better yet, do one on a video. I think that could be pretty cool. Thanks for sharing, Nick. So now I have this month's YouTube program schedule. I'm switching all scheduled releases back to 9 a.m. Pacific time this month because I didn't see any advantage to releasing them later in the day. Remember, I was running a test for the past month or two. Anyway, on September 11th, we have a product spotlight. On September 12th, it's the Niles Canyon Railway with Henry Baum. On September 18th, we have another product spotlight. On the 19th, it's a big train run-by compilation with a bunch of my shots from my adventures over the years. On September 20th at 4 p.m. Pacific time, it's the return of the TSG Live Crew Lounge. This will be a virtual panel discussion streamed live with our panelists discussing what they've been doing during the pandemic, modeling-wise. It's the first one we're trying on this new format, so I hope you'll join us. On the 25th, it's N-Scale Friday. And on September 26th, I have plans to release the next episode of Model Railroading 101. The topic is still up in the air right now, but once I know, I'll probably announce it on Facebook and on the community tab right here on the channel. Finally, on October 2nd, we have one more product spotlight before the next podcast. I just want you to know that it's quite likely that I'll come on at some point during the month with a live talk show like we did last month. That was so much fun that I'd like to do it again. I just don't know when I'll have time to do it. So if you're interested in catching that, please subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you get notified whenever there's activity on the channel. Before I finish this segment, I want to ask you something. Do you think knowing what's coming out ahead of time is helpful? I mean, does it make you look forward to certain programs, or do you just watch whatever comes out when you have time, and maybe you don't even care about what it is, and you'll just, figure you'll find out when it comes out? Do you know what I mean? Please let me know in the comment section. I'm just curious. It takes a lot of effort to go through and make all this, schedule and everything, and I don't want to be wasting my time and yours. So just let me know in the comments below. So that's all I have for you this time. Before I go, I want to invite you to become a part of the TSG train crew. I think you'll feel great about helping put the content that you enjoy on the channel, and you'll also get some cool perks too, including ad-free 4K Ultra HD content before the rest of the world even knows it's coming. As always, I thank you for your continued support, and I'll see you next time.